Hello, English learners. Welcome back to another episode of English Podcast. I'm Jack, your co-host, and with me, as always, is the ever-energetic Julia. How's it going, Julia?
Hey Jack, it's going great. I'm really excited about today's topic because it's something we all face at one point or another, laziness. How about you, Jack? Ever had those days where you just can't seem to get moving?
Oh, absolutely. I think everyone has those days. It's like no matter how much coffee you drink or how many motivational quotes you read, you just can't shake off that sluggish feeling. But that's what we're here for, right? To figure out how to overcome it.
Exactly. So let's dive right in. What do you think is the root cause of laziness, Jack? Why do we get stuck in that rut?
That's a good question. I think laziness often stems from a mix of factors. Sometimes it's physical, like being tired or not getting enough sleep. Other times it's mental, like feeling overwhelmed by a big task or not having a clear plan. What about you, Julia? What's your take?
I totally agree with you. I also think that sometimes it's about our environment. If you're in a space that's cluttered or doesn't inspire you, it can be really hard to get motivated. Plus, with so many distractions around us, like social media and TV, it's easy to get sidetracked.
Absolutely, the environment plays a huge role. Speaking of which, let's talk about some practical tips for dealing with laziness. What's the first thing you do when you're feeling lazy?
For me, the first step is to acknowledge it. I think it's important to recognize that you're feeling lazy without beating yourself up about it. Once you accept it, you can start to tackle it. One of my go-to strategies is breaking down tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. It makes everything seem less daunting. How about you?
That's a great approach. For me, I find that setting a timer for a short period, like 10 or 15 minutes, can help. I tell myself, I'll just work for 10 minutes, and often, once I get started, I end up working longer. It's all about getting that initial momentum.
Yes, the Pomodoro technique. It's amazing how effective it can be. Another thing I find helpful is changing my environment. Sometimes just moving to a different room or going to a coffee shop can make a big difference.
Definitely, a change of scenery can do wonders for your motivation. Also, I think it's important to reward yourself. Giving yourself something to look forward to after completing a task can be a great motivator.
Rewards are key. It could be something small, like a piece of chocolate or a few minutes of watching your favorite show. It's all about positive reinforcement. Do you have any favorite rewards, Jack?
Oh, for sure, I'm a big fan of taking a short walk outside. It's refreshing and helps clear my mind. Plus, it's healthy. How about you, Julia? What's your favorite way to reward yourself?
I love a good cup of tea and some quiet time with a book. It's simple, but really effective for me. Now, what about dealing with the mental side of laziness? Any tips for staying mentally motivated?
I think setting clear, achievable goals is crucial. When you have a clear target, it's easier to stay focused. Also, visualizing the end result and how great you'll feel once you've accomplished your task can be really motivating.
Visualization is such a powerful tool. Another thing I find helpful is surrounding myself with positive influences. Whether it's friends, podcasts, or even following motivational people on social media, it all helps to keep me in the right mindset.
That's a great point. Community and support are so important. Speaking of which, let's take a quick break and hear from some of our listeners about how they deal with laziness. We've got a few listener stories to share. Julia, do you want to read the first one?
Sure thing. This one's from Emily in Seattle. She says, "Hi Jack and Julia. Love the podcast. One thing that really helps me when I'm feeling lazy is making a to-do list the night before. That way, when I wake up, I have a clear plan and it's easier to get started."
That's a fantastic tip, Emily. Having a to-do list can definitely give you a sense of direction and purpose. It's also satisfying to check things off as you complete them.
Absolutely, and I love the idea of doing it the night before. It gives your mind a chance to process and prepare for the day ahead. Our next story comes from Brian in New York. He writes, "Hey guys, I struggle with laziness a lot, especially when it comes to exercising. What helps me is having an accountability partner. My friend and I check in with each other every day to make sure we've done our workouts."
Accountability partners are such a great idea. Having someone else to check in with can really boost your motivation and commitment. It's much harder to skip out when you know someone else is counting on you.
Definitely, and it adds a social element, which can make tasks more enjoyable. Thanks for sharing, Brian. Our last story for today is from Sarah in Austin. She says, "Hi Julia and Jack, I find that music really helps me get going. I have a special playlist of upbeat songs that I play when I need a boost of energy. Music is such a powerful motivator. A good playlist can really change your mood and energy levels. I've got a few go-to songs myself that always pump me up, Julia. Same here." Thanks to all our listeners for sharing their tips. It's always great to hear different strategies. Before we wrap up, Jack, do you have any final thoughts on overcoming laziness?
I'd say the key is to be kind to yourself and experiment with different strategies to see what works best for you. Remember, it's okay to have lazy days, but with the right tools, you can overcome them and get back on track. How about you, Julia?
I completely agree. Self-compassion is so important. And don't be afraid to mix things up and try new approaches. What works one day might not work the next, and that's okay. Keep moving forward and celebrate your progress, no matter how small.
Let's diving even deeper into the topic of laziness. Julia, you mentioned earlier about the mental aspect. I think procrastination is a big part of that. Why do you think we procrastinate, and how can we tackle it?
Procrastination is such a tricky issue. I think it often stems from fear of failure, fear of not being perfect, or even fear of success. When a task feels overwhelming or we're not sure where to start, it's easy to put it off. One way to tackle it is to break tasks down into smaller steps and focus on just starting rather than finishing. The act of starting can often reduce that feeling of being overwhelmed.
That's a great point. It reminds me of the concept of eating the frog, tackling the most challenging or dreaded task first thing in the morning. Once you get that out of the way, everything else feels more manageable.
Yes, eating the frog is a great strategy. It reduces anxiety because you're not dreading that big task all day. Another technique I find helpful is the 2-minute rule. If something will take less than 2 minutes to do it immediately. It helps to build momentum and reduces the accumulation of small tasks that can become overwhelming.
I love the 2-minute rule. It's amazing how many little tasks you can knock out quickly. Speaking of which, let's talk about the role of habits in combating laziness. How important do you think habits are in maintaining productivity?
Habits are crucial. They provide structure and routine, making it easier to stay on track without having to rely on constant willpower. Creating positive habits, like setting a regular wake-up time or dedicating specific hours to certain activities, can significantly reduce the temptation to be lazy.
Absolutely. Building good habits creates a kind of autopilot mode where you do things without having to think about them too much. But forming new habits can be challenging. Do you have any tips for building and sticking to new habits?
Consistency is key when it comes to building new habits. Start small and gradually increase the difficulty or duration. For example, if you want to start exercising, begin with just 5 minutes a day and slowly build up. Also, linking new habits to existing ones, like doing a quick workout right after brushing your teeth in the morning, can make them stick more easily.
That's a great strategy. Habit stacking, as it's sometimes called, can really help integrate new behaviors into your daily routine. Another thing I found useful is keeping a habit tracker. It's motivating to see your progress and can help you stay accountable.
A habit tracker is a fantastic tool. It provides a visual representation of your efforts and can be very motivating. Plus, it's satisfying to mark off each day you've stuck to your habit. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about mindset. How does our mindset affect our productivity, and how can we cultivate a more proactive mindset?
Mindset is huge. A positive, proactive mindset can make a world of difference. One way to cultivate this is through affirmations and positive self-talk. Replacing negative thoughts with positive ones can help you stay motivated and focused.
Definitely, another aspect of mindset is the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. People with a growth mindset believe they can improve and learn with effort, while those with a fixed mindset believe their abilities are static. Embracing a growth mindset encourages us to take on challenges and persist despite setbacks.
That's so true. Embracing challenges as opportunities to grow rather than threats to our abilities can be incredibly empowering. What about self-care? How do you think taking care of our physical and mental health plays into combating laziness?
Self-care is fundamental. When we're not taking care of ourselves, it's much harder to find the energy and motivation to be productive. This includes getting enough sleep, eating well, staying hydrated, and managing stress. It's also important to take breaks and allow ourselves time to recharge.
Exactly, it's all about balance. Sometimes we're lazy because our bodies and minds are telling us we need rest. Listening to those signals and taking care of ourselves can actually prevent prolonged periods of laziness in the long run.
Yes, listening to our bodies is so important. Ignoring the need for rest can lead to burnout, which is much harder to recover from. Taking regular breaks, practicing mindfulness, and ensuring we have downtime are all essential.
Mindfulness is a great practice for staying present and reducing stress. Whether it's through meditation, yoga, or just taking a few moments to breathe deeply, it can make a big difference. Before we wrap up, let's talk about long-term strategies. How can we create sustainable routines that keep us productive in the long run?
Sustainability is key. One strategy is to periodically review and adjust your routines. What works for you in one season of life might not work in another. Being flexible and willing to make changes can help keep your routines effective. Another is to set both short-term and long-term goals. This gives you something to strive for and keeps you motivated.
I completely agree. Flexibility and regular review are essential. Celebrating milestones along the way is also important. It keeps you motivated and reminds you of how far you've come. Any final thoughts, Julia?
Just to reiterate that it's a journey. Overcoming laziness isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Be kind to yourself, keep experimenting with different strategies, and don't give up. You've got this.
Great advice, Julia. And to all our listeners, remember that every small step you take is a step towards a more productive and fulfilling life. Thanks for joining us today.
Until next time, stay motivated and take care of yourselves.